Hello, everybody. Good evening. I hope you were all having a fantastic day. I am going to be going live with the lovely A.M. Ito, who is the author of The Origins of a Guildmaster, as well as the rest of the Fomorian Legends novellas. There are currently 2 more that I have read, and then there's going to be a complete novel that is going to come out. So these are kind of like setting the precedent and kind of establishing the world so that you can go ahead and start understanding where they're coming from. Thank you so much for the likes and the shares. Really, really appreciate you. That's very, very kind. As we're just here to talk about authors and talk with authors and kind of just have a great time. So I actually just reread this today, and it's been it was amazing to kind of go back into this because I read this first when I was on my cruise. And obviously, I was on the beach and it was super fun. But this novella, it's honestly the way that A.M. writes, and I will talk with her a little bit more about that. It's just like this novella, look how short it is. It's super short, and it feels like a complete, full book and story. It's very, very awesome. That she was able to do that, and feel like you're getting introduced to the world, and you're getting introduced to the world slowly. So it's definitely really cool to have novellas, and it got me thinking about my own novel and my writing, and I'm wondering, like, that's such a good idea, actually, to kind of like get out there, kind of practice writing, and you see how people react to it. So, well, this is the only published one so far. There will be another one coming out next Monday on the 19th, and that one is going to be called Secrets of a Sagacious, I think that's how you say it, witch. And then there is also another one. So I have beta read for AM. So I beta read this one, and then the 2 more. The one that is coming out on Monday, and then the one that's going to be coming out, I believe, in April. So I've gotten kind of an interesting point of view, and it's been really cool. So I think we just had our author join, so I'm going to invite her, and then we can start. All right, so we are going to be talking today about Origins of a Guildmaster as well as the rest of the novel. Hi.
Hi. I don't know if it worked.
It worked. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Let's see if I can figure this out. There we go. Okay. I am not a tech-savvy person. I am so sorry.
That's okay. It's totally fine. So I was just telling everybody a little bit about your book, how I kind of got involved with talking with you.
Okay.
So we're just going to go ahead and dive right in, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So the first question I have is, what was the moment in your life that you decided that you wanted to be a writer? And what was your education like?
So I've been writing forever. I'm one of those kids that like grew up reading from the moment I could start reading. I remember being obsessed with the Mistmantle Chronicles, like 3rd grader trying to like get into the fantasy genre. And so I've always written on the side, and there was this point where I was in a really weird place in my life trying to figure out relationship change, and I wrote a book that kind of dealt with the feelings that went with that. And when I got into my relationship with my husband, he read it and he was like obsessed with it. He's like, you have to write more of this. I want to know what comes next. And at that point, I was deep into a psychology career. I was working as an addiction counselor, actually. And we kind of made an entire life change where we started traveling, and with his income, we get to travel all over the country. We live in a trailer. So we do that a lot, and trying to find a job in the psychology community when you're traveling is basically impossible. So then I was trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life other than just sitting around the house. And I started writing another book, just kind of bored, I guess. And so I finally finished it. And again, he was my only reader. So he read it and he's like, no, this needs to be like, you need to keep going with this. I need more of this. And I was like, maybe it actually is like kind of a good book. And so I started re-editing it, and it went through like 8 different rounds. And so finally I was like, I absolutely want to have this out there. Like, I want to do this full time. Like, this is really what I love to do. And so we had a sit down moment where he's like, you can pursue this and that's okay. Like, you don't have to go back into psychology. You can do this full time and try and do this. And so it was really this moment of like, I guess this is what I'm doing now. I guess like, I'm done with psychology. I'm going to become an author, I guess. It was kind of a weird career shift.
I think that's really awesome that you have the support that you do from your husband. I'm actually a mental health counselor, so I totally know what you're saying. There's a lot that goes into being a mental health counselor too.
Yes.
It takes a lot out of you. And writing can be like escape and something like that too. So that's really cool. It's a really unique way to kind of come into your own as being an author. Tell us a little bit about how you write. So do you plot? Do you quilt? What do you do?
So with my first 2 books, I did not plot anything out. I like dove right into them, started writing scenes, and it just kind of came to me. And over time, I realized that's not going to work if I want to do this as a career. Like, I need to have a little more structure in my life. And especially when I decided to do the novellas, and I wanted to release them within the year, I realized I really needed to like figure out how I'm going to sit down and write these, because you can't just take 3 years to write it if they're all going to come out at once. So I went out and did a ton of research on like what is a plot, what are the different types of plots, what are the beats you need, what are the different types of character arcs and how they fit into things. And so now I have a whole folder on my computer that I open up every single time I'm going to start a new story, whether it's a novella or a book or whatever. And I sit down and kind of get basic ideas of how the new book is going to fit into this plot structure that I've already created in this folder. So I always have that open when I do my first draft to make sure I'm hitting all of like the plot beats that I need to hit for certain stories.
Cool. And before you signed on, I was kind of talking about like the idea of, the novellas and like how short this book is, how much is packed into it, and like how it feels like a complete like whole story, which is like, honestly, I've never read a novella like that before. So you definitely have talent with that.
Thank you.
So, what do you enjoy most about writing in like the fantasy genre?
I like feeling like I have magic powers. Like, I think that's just so much fun. Like I said, as a kid, I was always obsessed with fantasy. Like, I wanted to be the witch. I wanted to be like the waterbender from Avatar. And so writing was kind of a way to just be able to do that, since you can't obviously do that in real life. I wanted to have the magic powers. So I wrote books with magic powers so that I can like experience it for myself, I guess.
Now that you say that, like, I reread this today just so I would like, be well versed in at least this one. Because I like to reread things and because I think it's different the next time. And now I can see what you're saying about Avatar.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. What do you need in your writing space to stay focused? So I think that maybe you have a unique situation being in a traveling home, so that could definitely be different.
Yeah. So our trailer is actually only about 200 square feet. So It is super, super tiny. And it's basically a studio apartment. And since he works full time, and I am fairly nocturnal in my life, he needs to sleep and I need to be able to write in the dark by myself. So for me, it's just music. I have noise canceling headphones, like those big Sony headphones or whatever. And I'll put on music to just start writing to that he obviously can't hear. So he can sleep in the dark and I can just get in the zone with whatever playlist I need at that moment and just really get focused on what I'm doing. And then I, after a while, kind of lose myself in whatever story I'm working on. And I don't even notice. There was actually one time recently, I just finished sending off the 3rd novella to you guys. And I was like, okay, I'm going to open up this passion project I haven't looked at in like 2 years. And I opened it up and I put my headphones on. And next thing I know, his alarm is going off to go to work. And it's 6 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't even realize that I was still working. So, as long as there's music and it's dark and I'm by myself, I can usually start like keep writing for hours and hours on end.
That's really cool. That's really cool and very unique. We have somebody in the comments that says
Hi,
that
CJ.
they want to see your inspiration playlist, which I would love to see too.
Oh, goodness.
And that's one of our questions for later. So we'll talk a little bit more about music and things like that. And our last question, and kind of just talking about being an author, is what's your kryptonite? What gets in your way? And how do you overcome that?
In the moment, it's always my husband. He'll come home and my brain immediately switches off of work mode because I am trying to do this full time. So like it's my entire day. And sometimes like he works outside in construction. So the weather will get bad and he's home at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, oh, no work today. I'm not doing anything today. So he is very much my distraction in the moment. But long term, it's very much, he's over in the corner, very much, the imposter syndrome, because I have really, really bad anxiety, which in mental health, I'm sure you understand how crippling that can be at times. Mm-hmm. And so, like recently, I got the second novella back from my editor, and it sat in my email, I think, for like 4 or 5 days, and I could not bring myself to open it. It was so anxiety-inducing to just think about somebody critiquing it for whatever reason. Even though, like, I feel so much more emotionally attached to the first one, for whatever reason, hearing her feedback, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I actually made him open it up and read me the comments because it felt so much nicer coming from him than, like, a stranger. So I think just anxiety in general is what really, really gets to me, because I won't be able to post, like, on social media to get people buying anything. I won't be able to work on a project because I'm like, oh, it's not as good as the first one, or I can't figure out the climax for this or whatever. And it's just trying to get over that crippling anxiety is really the thing that gets in my way, like in long term, like, yeah, anyway.
No, I think that imposter syndrome I've heard a few times, you know, I mean,
yeah.
Because you have all these ideas, right? Like, I mean, very obviously, like the world that you created and that you're creating, like ongoing it's so involved, you know, and so it's like I have loved beta reading. Like you're the first person I beta read for, and I've loved beta reading, just because, like, I mean, I think your questions are amazing, like for the feedback, but I think it, you know, it allows like to get that feedback like from readers like before it gets to a point where it's published, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
you know, I wish I would have changed that sort of thing. That's good.
And your guys' feedback is kind of everything. When I got the feedback for the second novella, it was actually one of you guys that inspired a huge change towards the end of the book in the greenhouse scene, which I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I had a few people come back and they're like, you know, this isn't quite working and I don't know why. It might be the character, I don't know. And then one of you guys suggested who to switch it to. And I was like, obviously, like, how, like, I don't know why I didn't think of that initially. That is so obvious. And so really the beta reads can be a huge part of what makes a novel so successful, because you guys can see things that I never will.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really cool. It's definitely, because I ARC read, you know, I've ARC read for probably, you know, almost 10 years, but I never did beta, and I honestly didn't even know what it was until you put a call out, and I was like, all right, like, I'll try it, why not?
Why not?
But now, like, even for myself, like, I'm trying to write a novel, and, like, I'm, like, chomping at the bit to, like, get somebody to read it, like, for the first time. But I've been told, write the whole thing and look for it. But I have ADHD, and I just want to, like, impulsive and just get it done. But I'll be patient. All right. So we're going to just start with just talking about this lovely book. This is starting out. And so we'll focus on that for the next set of questions.
Okay.
So if you had to describe Origins of a Guildmaster in one sentence, what would that sentence be?
Oh, goodness. I think the best one is just the way I was kind of targeting it when I was marketing it at the time, which is just dark fantasy meets Oliver Twist. For whatever reason, as soon as that came to mind, I was like, oh, that's so obviously it. I didn't have that in mind at all when I was writing it. And then I was trying to find stories that involve this kind of shift in thinking and discovering how dark society can actually be. And that's kind of when it hit me that Oliver Twist was so much like those characters. And so that I think that's really just the core of what that novella is dark fantasy meets Oliver Twist.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. It's very I mean, I love Malachi as a character, so like I can't wait to like keep going with him. Actually, like, find out like even more. So I know that this is one of the most tough questions, but in this particular novella, who is your favorite character to write and why? There's two main characters pretty much, so you gotta pick one or two.
I love you. I know he not to spoil it, but he's not really there at the end, but having him around in the book, I think he brings this amazing bubbliness to light, like the world that is so dark, and it's almost like, how can such a bubbly character exist in such a dark world? And I just love the light he brings, especially because Malachi is very businesslike. He's very stoic. He doesn't have a lot of emoting. Like, he feels deeply inside, but he's not good at expressing that. And having like this little kid who isn't afraid to just speak his mind and be the bubbly personality that Malachi needs to balance himself out is really when it got fun to start writing, is having that little bubbly energy there. So you is probably my favorite character to write in that particular story.
And I think that he also brings like a sense of innocence, right? Like,
yes.
And, like you said, in a dark world, like, but his innocence has been tarnished, but then Malachi also has innocence that he doesn't. There's like a particular part that I think, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm just, it's like, it's interesting to see like how, while you is innocent, he has had experiences that Malachi has never even thought about.
Yes.
So I think that that's really cool too, like how they play off of each other. Malachi just feels like a big brother. Like, I kind of like okay, so I'm really trying to remember my questions.
No problem.
My laptop died.
Oh no.
Okay, so first question was describe, then it was character. And let me see. What was the most challenging part of writing the book or writing this particular novella?
Oh goodness, it's for the first one, for Origins of a Guildmaster, it was very much trying to find that balance of being honest about how dark the world was and seeing that underground, and coming from the perspective of somebody who hasn't seen it before, while maintaining a sense of dignity for people that are in that situation. I volunteered with a company called Uplift in Kansas City when I was in high school, and what they did was take hot meals and clothing and canned goods and stuff like that out to like parks and stuff in Kansas City and give it out to the homeless. And it part of the inspiration for the novella was that I would hear about different organizations that were trying to shut down that program because they thought it enabled homelessness. And as a teenager, that incensed me. I was like, how in the world can you ever think this? And as I've gotten older, I can see where people are coming from, but I heavily don't agree with it. And so it's just trying to approach people who are in that type of situation with that sense of dignity and not make them feel any lesser for being in that situation, and trying to be empathetic to all the reasons somebody might end up there, why they might end up doing the things they do to just stay alive. Sometimes we hear about people stealing food or whatever, and it sounds really bad to hear that they're stealing from supermarkets or whatever, but then you have to go to that other side and have that sympathy of, well, why are they stealing something as essential as bread or cheese or whatever? And just trying to find that balance between ignorance and learning about that world, and also the empathy and understanding that comes from somebody who already lives there.
I think you put that very beautifully in that we don't always understand where someone else is coming from, and that's empathy, right? Empathy is being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and I feel like you conveyed that really well with Malachi's character.
Thank you.
And I think it's also like really interesting because I didn't know you had a psychology background. I'm thinking about myself, and I just think like how much you have put that into the characters. Like, they just feel very like real and like raw, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a beautiful thing when you can make somebody feel an emotion. Like, you know.
I definitely heard back from some of the readers that they were very upset, and I was like, it's a 70-page novella. I don't know how you feel so upset about this one character, but in the same way, I understand because it is such a real problem. It's something we see all the time, so it's hard to keep that distance, even though it is a fantasy world.
Right. And the next question is, what's your favorite quote? But you do have a quote on the front of the
Yes.
novella, and it's, one day you will learn that not everything you break is fixable. So is that
Yes.
safe to say that that's your favorite quote?
Yeah, that is definitely one of my favorite quotes from that novella. I think I put my favorite quote on the front of all the novellas. As they come out, you'll see one quote that goes with each of them. And some of those quotes I actually came up with before I finished writing the novella, and because I knew I wanted that quote on there. So for me, that is definitely those quotes that I'm very attached to because I had to make sure they worked into the book real nicely, and so they were always turning over in my head whenever I was writing.
And I agree with DJ. I read when I read that last reading it over, I was just like, that's I don't know, it made me feel things. I like it. And the last question in this section is, if you had to imagine you and Malachi as actors that are out there in the world, who would you cast them as?
Oh, I'm going to open up my laptop here for a second because, like I told you, I'm not a movie person. Like actors, I don't really follow them very much. What was the first one? I think his name was. Oh, I'm horrible with names. I'm just going to look it up. See if I can even type my own password.
If anybody has any questions, by the way, you can feel free to drop them in the chat. We will obviously have as much time as Am with us.
Oh, I am here all night as long as he does not get annoyed with me, making him silence the TV. We're good. My cats are yelling at him over in the corner.
I hear your cats.
So I have two cats. Yeah, they're very vocal. They are not quiet cats. I'm actually kind of surprised they are not right here. They have this way of knowing when you're doing something and when you're working, and they will just they don't love me any other time of day, but when I'm working, it's the only time they love me. Oh, that was his name, Dan Stevens. He played the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, and
yes.
yeah, I saw his picture and I was like, that's Malachi right there with the light eyes and the kind of colorless hair, but very almost severe look to him, where he could just kind of go through the world and be very stoic in his manner. He absolutely hit me as Malachi right away. And then for you, it was a little bit harder. I actually used a website called MyCast, and it was helping me find people with certain characteristics. And the actor that came up, his name's Braxton Rodimer. I haven't seen anything he's in, but he has this really cute, innocent face to him, with these really bright eyes. And I just saw him and I was like, he looks so bubbly, so lively. I could see him bouncing through the streets, even if he was in all ratty clothes, whatever. I could just see him bringing such a life. And so he was definitely the one I would pick for you if I had to pick somebody. Just somebody who can smile and be bubbly no matter what circumstance they're in.
Well, that's a really good website to know, for sure. We'll move on to the last piece. And so it's just fun questions, fun things to kind of chat about. Other than writing, what are some interests and hobbies and things that you like to do?
So I am a big outdoorsy person. As you can probably imagine, I travel full time. So I'm always outside. I will actually camp in my Jeep. I have a 4-door Wrangler that I can string a hammock up in because I'm super short. I'm only 5 feet tall. And so I can string a hammock up in my Jeep, and I've been to almost every national park west of Kansas. And so I'll go by myself for a week or two at a time and camp out in my Jeep. I backpack a lot, so I've actually been out on the Appalachian Trail. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Yeah. I've been out there 3 times now, and I've done the first 200 miles of the trail. So backpacking, hiking, anything of the sort, I will be doing it all the time.
That's cool. That's Very cool. Um, have you, how do you kind of imagine, being a traveler, how do you kind of imagine the the setting? Um, have you been somewhere that made you think of the setting in this book, or is there a certain city that kind of reminds you of what this setting is?
Not necessarily, though, kind of related to one of the questions with have you ever traveled for the book? About a year ago now, I went on a 6 week trip to Europe and I toured 9 different countries, I think it was, over the course of 6 weeks. And I absolutely fell in love with Prague, which sounds like such a random choice. But we went and we were just going through the streets with all the markets and like the cobblestone streets with the brick buildings everywhere. And I was absolutely in love with it. I didn't go for the book research, but I ended up doing a lot of research for the books because I'm an outdoorsy girl, I'm a country girl. I have never stepped foot in an American like big city outside of an occasional trip to Chicago. So I'm not familiar with a lot of cities, especially when I was writing the books. So by going to Europe and seeing some of those really old ancient cities that are just all stone everywhere, I loved it. That is exactly how I pictured this city. I didn't realize that when I wrote it, but when I finally went there and saw it, I was like, this is the Elemental City. Prague was my absolute dream.
Cool. Well, I've always wanted to see like more Eastern Europe. I've been to Western, but I've always wanted to kind of see that area. Maybe one day.
One day.
So we'll go to the question about music, since a lot of people have questions. So tell us a little bit about like music you listen to when you write, or if there are any like songs in particular that make you think this.
This is going to sound totally random. I can't believe I'm admitting this. I like metal Viking music. So like Dan Vasc, Peyton Parrish, Miracle Sound, they are my writing music for some reason. Something about the epicness of it. It's a little bit hardcore, like it's super loud, super deep, all bass, and it just gets my heart pumping. Like that is what I want to listen to when I'm writing. There's something about it that makes me feel like I'm being immersed into a fantasy world. And that's the music I really love. Either I need something that's going to fit the emotions that I'm trying to get. So like I'll find the exact, like with my romance books, I was like Dawn of a Ruinous Love, I was trying to find songs that were all about forbidden love. And so I made an entire playlist of just songs that fit that vibe. So it'll either be all about the emotion of the book or all about just the epicness of it. So I listen to a lot of metal Viking music, which is super random, but it really,
It has words,
yeah, it,
so you can listen to words and write at the same time.
if it's a,
That's
if it's a
that
song
is
I,
like a feat in itself. Like having ADHD, I'm like, how do you even do that? It's cool.
if it's a song I've heard enough times, I'll just like put those words to the background and just listen to the vibes of the song and really get into the sound of it. Something about what to my brain sounds really beautiful. I don't know what defines beautiful to my brain because it is such a random array of music. Hi CJ, I see you down there. Uh, it's such a random array of music that sounds beautiful to my brain because I'll be listening to the music in the car, and my husband's like, "How in the world did we get from point A to point B here?" Like right now we have Disney music. We were just listening to metal Viking dwarf music. Like no one's probably heard of it, but "Diggy Diggy Hole" is literally a song about dwarfs digging holes in like a Tolkien-esque world, and it's super hardcore metal dwarf music. And so we'll go from one to the other, and he's like, "I have no idea how to decide what you want to listen to." It's like it's all the vibes, whatever sounds good in that moment. That's what I want to listen to.
So is there like a particular song that like you think of like when you think like of this book or
Uh,
memoir?
when it comes to Origins of a Guildmaster, ironically enough, I'm sure you've watched it, The Greatest Showman.
Yeah.
So there's a song right at the beginning. I can't remember what it's called, but it starts as like him as a boy singing about his dreams of the world they're going to create, and then like it turns into Hugh Jackman singing, and then his wife singing. And to me, for some reason, when I hear that song, it makes me think of this world. It makes me think of you going through the world, dreaming of something better. Yes, a million dreams. Thank you. Thank you, Isabel. It For whatever reason, I hear you at the beginning of that song so hard, just walking through the world by himself, dreaming of better things to come. And then when that second verse comes, I picture him saying those words to Malachi. Like, this is the world we're going to create. It's going to get so much better. I'm going to grow up and I'm going to do great things. And him just dreaming of such a better world. And as Jackman comes on, I'm like, oh, now it's Malachi's turn. Malachi's going to dream of this better world, and so on. So for some reason, it's A Million Dreams that really hits home for that book for me.
I think I'm going to have to like go upstairs after this, and like I have AirPods, because like you have the Sony ones. Like I love like the quality, and I'm just going to sit there and then close my eyes. And I'm just going to listen to it. And this is my favorite question. I've gotten so many amazing recommendations. So I want to know some books or authors that you would recommend that you enjoy.
So, kind of like my music taste, I will read anything fantasy, and it just has to strike the right chord for me. I'm sure if you've watched any of my videos, I love John Gwynne. He's not even like the best writer out there. He just writes characters that work for me. For whatever reason, I love his characters. I didn't even like the first book I read by him for whatever reason. And then I got to the end and I was like, yes, new obsession. I love T. Kingfisher. I love the worlds that she creates. There's something so whimsical and fun about them. Even when they're not fun books, they're still fun to read. And I don't know how she does it, but I would love to live in her brain for a day. There is somebody I'm reading right now. I'm actually friends with this author over on Instagram, which is how I found his book. And he has like 2 reviews. I don't know how, but the book is called A Soul Katim. It's kind of a weird title, by Joshua Rayburn. And the writing is so classic fantasy. It feels like you're almost reading an installation of like Wheel of Time or just that super classic fantasy. But all of those complaints I would normally have, female main characters aren't very good, or like we're super detached from the characters and we can't get inside their head at all. He's really taken that and fixed those problems. So there are some of the most amazing female badass main characters I could ever imagine in this book, and it's written by some guy. I've never even met him, but it is such an amazing book, and I'm like 70% of the way through because I could not stop reading it. So that is definitely one I hope more people end up reading it, because it just came out, and I know it's not very popular right now, but I think it really could be if people discover it.
Awesome. I'll definitely check out some of those recommendations. Okay. Share some advice for aspiring authors, or what you would want a younger you to know.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give to authors who are maybe still in that stage of like trying to work through the hard parts of their book, like maybe they still have that first draft going and they're trying to figure out how plot works, and they're like, hey, this isn't working. What I ended up doing is watching a lot of movie critiques, and like not even highbrow movies like Shrek and Disney movies or whatever. There are people out there who will do 3-hour-long video essays on every point of the plot and the character arcs and what makes this movie work and that movie not work, and why this world works but that character doesn't, and super, super in-depth critiques of these fantasy movies. And watching them really helped me understand how to construct a plot that people wanted to read. It helped me understand why certain character arcs work and some don't. Like, why do you have a sequel? Is a sequel even important? What kind of information needs to be in that sequel to make it worth reading? It needs to expand the world and all of these things that I never even thought about until I started watching like in-depth movie critiques of movies that aren't even like the super highbrow intellectual movies. It's stuff like Kung Fu Panda and Shrek and Frozen, just the stuff you watch on repeat. You know why. Learning why those movies are so good and why they hit all the right chords really helped me understand how to write a book, ironically enough.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty unique. I think that in trying to figure out, how to craft and things like that, I know people have like told me about Bird by Bird, um, Save the Cat. Like I
Hmm.
read Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and like honestly, like I screen like shotted or like highlighted like so much stuff in that. And self editing for fiction authors too. It was just like mind blowing. Like, I didn't even consider. Like,
Hmm.
like you're writing for you, but you're also writing like, for someone else to enjoy it. So that's really interesting that you watch movie critiques. Very cool. If anybody would like to join, like, and ask a question, like, please feel free to request to be a guest. But know that this will be uploaded on YouTube. So if you don't want to link out there, probably not the best thing to go live with us on video, but you can ask a question. So it's like a seven, novella series,
Hmm.
things like that. So tell us a little bit about, what's next. What can we expect this year for you?
So this year I'll be releasing all the novellas. There will be 5 novellas in total, and obviously the first 2 are more or less out. The second one comes out next week, and the first one's already out. But there will be 3 more novellas, and then the first book will come out in October. It I know it sounded so weird when I put that call out for beta readers, where I was like, you don't have to read any, like you can pick and choose which ones you want to read. But that's really the idea behind the novellas, is that when I started writing the series, I wanted to make sure that all of my side characters, no matter how little they appeared in the story, they all had a background, whether that was one sentence or an entire paragraph. I knew how they got to this place. And so when I started writing the novellas, that's where those stories came from, is I already knew kind of the gist of how everyone got to the place they're at when the first book comes out. And so I started writing the backgrounds of all the characters, and that's how the novellas came up. So the 5 novellas are the 5 most impactful backstories of side characters from the main novel. And you don't really have to read any of them in order. You don't have to read them like, if you wanted to read just the third one because it's a romance, you could do that. And that's really what I wanted. I wanted people to be able to pick up the first novel if they had never read the novellas, understand exactly what's going on, have a favorite character, and want to know more. And now they can go back and see that more. It's already there. That's
Cool.
really
Well,
on it.
right?
Yeah.
Usually they write the novels and then people are like, "Oh, I want to know more about so and so," and then you're like, "Oh, you can with this novella that I came out." I think it was like that. What with Shatter Me?
Hmm.
I read the first three. Have not read any of the other ones because the first three were like it for me. Like I'm just like, okay, like that's Shatter Me. I don't know why there's like 12 books now. But I like the idea that you had. And so I also want to know because I just think that your covers are beautiful. Who's your cover designer? Does it say in here?
Uh, yeah, it does. It's a little company called JV Arts, and I
Oh,
think they're based in the Philippines, actually. I I found them because when I was looking for my covers, I'm super picky about covers. I'm one of those readers where if I don't like the cover, I probably won't pick up the book, which is super mean and terrible, and I need to stop doing it. But it's
all
a
of us
habit.
do that. We're
I
we're
know.
all guilty of doing that one for
And
another.
so when I went out looking for my cover designers, I was like, why don't I pick up books, indie books, that so I know the cover designers work with indie books that I just love the covers of. For whatever reason, I was drawn to this book based on the cover alone. And 3 or 4 of those covers all came from the same company. So I was like, oh, that's the one. That's the company I need to go with.
Cool.
So
Are you going to, or do you have any plans to like release like all the novellas in like one book?
I would love to one day. I didn't originally have that idea. I originally I wasn't even sure I was going to do marketing. Honestly, I was kind of planning for these novellas to come out super quietly, and then I went to release it, and I was like, I'll make like 2, 3 TikToks, whatever. I'm not even thinking about it, and those got some pretty decent attention just right off the bat. I was like, oh, maybe this will actually be a thing. So now I'm marketing all my novellas as if they're actual, a real series, which technically they are, but I never intended them to be the main focal point of the series. And so I'd really love to one day put them into one single novel. I don't really know how I'm going to do that yet, but I would like to do that one day, eventually, at some point.
Yeah. mean, I love all the original covers, so I feel like I would buy them all and then like buy that one. But something that I shared with you earlier, and it's like I think that I've seen like posts before about like dedications and like what like dedications that you love.
Yeah.
This one I just loved. It says to anyone who has ever felt hopeless in a world they didn't understand, and I just like love that. I was like, this is beautiful. So I really really like that too. Um, okay, so what was my question? Do you have any like signings, events, anything coming up that you're looking at or anything like that?
I wish I
It's hard
had
when
something
you're
like that. Well, we do move around pretty regularly. We're in Arizona right now. We've been here since November, I think, and we'll be here for quite a while more. But no sightings or anything like that. I'm so antisocial. I'm really bad at like reaching out and actually talking to people. I
Mhm.
probably wouldn't have even like thought to ask you to do this if you hadn't reached out to me first. Like it's such a bad habit, and I keep telling myself I need to really start like putting myself out there, but I still don't feel like a real author yet because my first like true novel isn't out yet, so I don't really feel like worthy of doing that. And I don't know why. It's so stupid, but no events right now.
Emotions are not logical, so you know that's kind of a thing.
I
Um,
know.
you know, and I totally understand like the imposter syndrome and those sort of things, but like I don't know what it was. Like the moment like I read this, and you know, obviously the next two I read, like I would like I was just like things don't get 5 stars for me very easily. Okay, like it's very hard to get 5 stars for me. Like 5 stars means I literally can find not one thing wrong with it, and I
Oh,
absolutely want to. And have gotten these novellas have gotten 5 stars from me. And like Cassandra Clare is like a 5 star for me. So like it's like putting you up there with Cassandra Clare. So I hope like, and I can't wait for you to to continue writing and getting more. Um, so maybe I'm a little harsh on people, but I don't know. It's just like it's it's just a wonderful world. It's amazing. It's amazing.
thank you.
I think that once people have the chance to read know the characters like on that deeper level and then go and read like the novel, I think that would be that will be beautiful too. And it's like I said, a unique experience that usually novellas come out after, so I think that that's going to definitely set you apart too, which that kind of caught my attention. I was like, a bunch of novellas, like what? Like what?
Like why?
Right, I was like, what? That's for the novels, but see, now you explained to me, so I understand. um well, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. You but obviously, like as I talk, I just think about different questions and things.
Yeah, no problem.
So I guess we can talk a little bit, about Sagacious Witch. Is that how you
Yes.
say it?
Sagacious. I
Sagacious.
had to look it up too.
I am literally. So that one comes out on Monday. So I mean,
Mhm.
it's about a week away. So I think it's safe to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that one. Like, what's that one about? Who does that focus on?
So I think the best description I've heard of this, and you've probably seen it in my like the last week, is that it's an ARC reader said that it felt like reading a witchy episode of Grey's Anatomy. And I was like, that is the best description I've ever heard. Like, I never could have come up with that by myself. And yet, it's the best marketing I could possibly put on this novel. I was actually putting off marketing it for the longest time because I had no idea how to hook readers. I was like, there's no romance, and that's such a huge part of book talk right now is the romance of books. And I'm like, I have no idea what's going to make people want to read it. I can't figure out how to really stick that landing. And so when I heard that from the ARC reader, I saw that in their review. I was like, that's it. That's all the marketing I need. It's a witchy Grey's Anatomy episode. Perfect.
I can see it. I see it. I think that like what was so cool about it was just like, I mean, I love knowledge. Like obviously, like I love to learn. I learn from my clients every day. And we have to do continuing education stuff. I have my fingers in too many pies. But that's ADHD for you. But like that's what I loved about it. Like is that like I just love like the mystery like part of it and like how it just like flowed together and like that feeling of like nobody believes in you but like you're believing in yourself and like you're like doesn't even matter what anyone else thinks
Yeah.
like you're doing it to help like she is genuine right like a therapist right or a doctor like I am doing this for that person I don't care what it costs me like that's selfless and I really
Yeah.
thought that came across in the book um let's see. What other things do you think are important for people to know about Seduce This Way?
Uh, it's so hard to talk about because it's so short. I don't want to like give anything away. I think it's just I did hear from one beta reader that they had a hard time getting into it because of just Jade's kind of attitude. She's a little full of herself at the beginning and at the end. But I don't think it defines her. To me, that's almost just the persona that's been put on her from the society she's grown up in. She's always had this goal of becoming this mega witch, like this healer at the university. And to do that, she's had to be confident. And I think it's a little bit almost of that bias we have on a lot of women where it's, you know, they're very cocky and they're very arrogant and they're full of themselves, but not for any bad. They have every right to be because they are amazing and they're doing amazing stuff. And we kind of pull back from that because that's not what we want women to be. And so I love that she is this strong person with this personality you don't see very often. And I would just encourage people to kind of give her a chance to be more than just that front that she puts on.
And obviously, there's reasons why she puts that front on as well in a way. I totally agree with CJ. She's a product of her environment. That's. I think that it's also like I'm trying to think. I think some feedback I came for that one was like I was so intrigued by like the powers and like the abilities that they had. I was just like I just want to know more about that. Like I need to know and I was like so impatient like about like I want to know more about that. I can't wait like to learn more about that. So I think that was really cool too because you just get to see so many different sides with the three that I've read so far. It's like I mean they are obviously so separate, but they're just like but they're intertwined as well.
Yeah, they all work together.
So and like I see the story building like, as you go through them. So I think that's just gonna make like the read of the novel like so much more enjoyable for sure.
I really hope so. I really hope that obviously the novel series will stand on its own really well, but I'm really hoping that for those who read the novellas first, they'll see all those underlying things. Like they'll see that one line that's in there and they're like, oh, I know why they're saying that, where that came from. Because there's a couple different moments where our main character, who you guys actually haven't even met yet, she is also kind of learning about the people in the world, about these other side characters. And she has these moments of like, oh, I didn't even realize you were like it's almost like that epiphany kids have where they're like, my parents were people before I was born. I didn't even know they were human beings. Like they had lives before me. And she kind of has this moment of, oh yeah, how did this come to be? How wild, Bill? Where did you come from? And so the characters will have these very brief conversations where they reveal something about themselves. And I think for the people who read the novellas, it'll be like, I know where that came from. I know why they're like this. I know why that rule's there. I know why they're saying this.
Like Easter egg.
Yes. Sorry, Isabel. I know.
There's a character we haven't met yet.
You guys will actually meet her for the first time in the first novella. She's a side character in the fourth novella, but that'll be the first time you guys get to meet our main character from the main series.
So excited. Let's see. So, Christy is asking, is she understanding the novellas are out, but not the main story? So, 3 of the novellas are out. Are going to be out. So one of them has been published. This one, well, they've been out to beta readers. So this one is published. Obviously, I haven't been doing so. The next one is Monday, and then the one after that comes out in
April.
Yep. And then there's going to be 2 more before the book in October.
Yes. So there'll
Yes.
be the novels will come out every 2 months essentially. So the first one was in December and then
Right.
February, April, and so on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, we're kind of talking about like how you don't need to read the novellas to read the main novel, but there's going to be so much more that you're going to notice reading those. You get to meet all the characters ahead of.
Yeah.
And I said the same thing. I said usually people do it backwards. So Christy agreed with that. It's an interesting way to do it, which I agree too. Um, well, I think that those are all the questions that I can think of. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me tonight. It's been absolutely wonderful and amazing. To learn more about you, more about, your writing style and your journey. And I can't wait to see, where you go. And I'm really honored to be a reader for you. It's definitely, it's a new experience, but it's been really rewarding. So I really thank you for that too, because obviously you didn't have to choose me, so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me because like I said, I didn't even like consider myself for being able to be interviewed yet. I don't feel like I've put enough out there to be like an author. And so I'm just as giddy about it too. I'm like, this is my first interview. I have to prepare. Like, I need to know all of my stuff and be ready. And so I just be asked to be here since I don't feel like I'm really there yet. I'm not like playing with the big boys yet, you know? And so I'm super excited. I really love that I got to see Isabel and CJ in here. They're also beta readers for me. So they're right there in the trenches with you. I absolutely love that they came to join me here. I'm honored to be here. I'm just excited to talk about it. I could talk about it all day.
Well, I think that we're probably going to have some more chats as more come out, especially once the novel brings out. Maybe you'll feel a little bit like you have more to share. But I think that we talked for about 45 minutes. I don't have a clock, so I think we have
Oh
plenty.
yeah, almost like an hour.
So thank you again so much, and we will definitely talk again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, bye everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.